All right. We are live. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. Whew. Let's see. New hot pocket west of Toretsk. Yes, there is indeed. Oklahoma in the house. Nice. Arkansas and Minnesota. Nice to see our early birds here. Welcome in, everybody. This is episode 156 of Calibrated with Scott. If you guys want to go ahead and get your current location, share your current location with me, I'd be very pleased. Let's see. Would like to man, I wanted to make AMK one of my mods for my chat, but I'm not sure I know how. So I was going to do that, and then I was looking, and I didn't see exactly how to do it. But it's okay. We will figure that out maybe for the next one. I don't even know if he's in here right now. Welcome in, everybody. Like I said, episode 156, titled Maximum Pressure. We have a few very specific updates that we're going to talk about. And then we're just going to talk about some of the stuff that's been going on. But I'm trying to do these live streams a little bit more frequently. So yeah, let's see where we got people in here from. Sweden, welcome. Saudi Arabia, welcome. Greetings from hell, right there with you, buddy. Antarctica, I doubt it, but Burr if you are. Sweden, Kansas, nice. Kansas. Hi, Scott. Hello against viral misinformation. Oz, Netherlands, Hungary, Manhattan, Mayo. I don't know what Mayo is. France, North Africa, South Africa, California, North Korea. Nice, guys. Everybody from everywhere. Canada. Nice. Oxford. All right, guys. Welcome in. Like I said, we have a few updates to talk about today, primarily focused on the Kostyantynivka front. That's where a majority of Russian advances are coming from. And remember, guys, these are just advances from 3 days, right? That's when I did my most recent, or 4 days, most recent live stream. So this is only 4 days of updates. So it's not going to be like the most. It's not going to be the longest live stream today. But I'm just trying to do these a little bit more consistently. All right, let's go ahead and go right over to the map. If nobody has anything else to say, let's do it. All right, we're going to start down in the Zaporizhzhia direction today. Just a small frontline shift up to the river right here, the Yanchur River. Not a major body of water, but just where the sort of the front line levels out. Again, remember previously we had a Russian advance towards Malanivka here in the Zaporizhzhia area. And the goal is to just begin to put pressure on Holyai-Polye the same way they did Velika Novosilka. Use Holyai-Polye as a stepping stone to advance towards Pokrovsk. And really just sort of close out the southern Zaporizhzhia, southern Donetsk, and then, northern Zaporizhzhia, or the southern Donetsk area right here, and then the southern Dnipropetrovsk area as well. So not a major advance here, but the fact that you are seeing Russian activity in this area is a good sign that the prediction that I had made that the Russians were going to push for Holyai-Polye and Orikhiv are beginning. So yeah. Moving up to the Oleksiniivka area. This is I don't know what to call this area right now. It's sort of in an in-between sort of position. Oleksiniivka has been captured. Oleksivka, has been captured by Russian forces. They have also captured the plantings to the north. And the way some other mappers are showing, they're putting most of this to the north in the gray zone. I'm not going to report on that quite yet. But basically everything from this ravine north to Kharkov is in the gray zone. There may be some small Ukrainian positions along this tree line here and in this area, but overall, most of this has now come under Russian control. So expect that update as well. And we do have confirmation that the Russians have positions in the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. So that area is now officially being pushed by the Russians. The Russians have entered the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. They had previously done so, but now we have confirmation of Russian positions actually in the Oblast itself along these initial tree lines. So that is another important situation happening here. All right, moving over to the bulk of our advances. Here is the Kostyantynivka advances. We're going to talk about this one in just a second. But we have a small advance right here west of Shevchenko-Pershe, and that is Russian forces have advanced into the village of Koptjeve, which again is another stepping stone, as we've talked about, to encircling Pokrovsk. Really, the Russians need to get up into Novotrotsk here and Boyokivka. And once that happens, the Russians will be able to put a lot of pressure on the logistics line, the last remaining logistics line into Pokrovsk and Minhorod. And we could see this battle beginning in the near future, depending on where the Ukrainians are going to decide to hold. There's so much pressure, and that's why the title of this episode is Maximum Pressure. There's so much pressure around the map that the Ukrainians, like I've said multiple times, they don't have the manpower to respond. They don't have the equipment or drone operators to hold the lines. So they're picking and choosing where they're going to lose territory. And the Russians are, again, just applying that pressure across the board and forcing that decision to be made. And it's becoming a very difficult decision. The Ukrainians are either going to let the Russians basically push into Dnipropetrovsk, which is going to be difficult to manage because of the lack of fortifications in the region. This could turn into a very bad situation very quickly. Over here, obviously, Pokrovsk and Minhorod is going to be a major satellite. I don't know if that's the right word necessarily, but forward position that for the Ukrainians that will be lost once the Russians gain control of this. It will be like they have control over another Donetsk. And I don't mean quite as in size. Obviously, Donetsk is much larger than these two settlements right here. But in terms of logistics, in terms of staging, the Russians are going to gain a major springboard out further into the Dnipropetrovsk region and up into the backside of the Slavyansk-Kramatorsk salient. Pokrovsk cannot be lost. If it is, the Ukrainians are going to have a major rip in their front line and no stability behind it. So I do expect the Ukrainians to try to hold Pokrovsk for as long as possible, just because of the realities of them losing it and the realities of what they have to defend back behind it. All right. I mean, and this is what I mean by that specifically is that there's no major cities back behind Pokrovsk and Minhorod. There's nothing until you get to Pulverhad. So it's a very, very long, big open area back behind Pokrovsk that the Ukrainians are going to have a hard time holding if they lose their staging abilities inside of the city. All right, moving over to the Kostyantynivka area. And I just wanted to start this off by kind of showing you guys that prediction I had made back in April. I believe it was on April 11th. And that's this one. I've moved it so you guys don't have to see all the entirety of the mess that will be made. If I clicked open like this one and showed you all the predictions, it's very messy. So I just moved this one into a separate folder. And here you can see that the Russians have advanced from Zelene Pole down here, have pushed up and have taken a majority of the territory that I had predicted in April that what they were going to take. Basically, that this entire front line was going to move north. That has happened. The Russians have now almost completely pushed out the Ukrainians from the southern end of this river right here, this Bichok River. The Ukrainians do not have a ton of positions in Yablanivka south of that river. And that means that the Ukrainian positions over here in Novospassky, in Shebenivka, and Katarinivka, and Klebanbik, these settlements right here, which has been a very stubborn area for the Russians to get through. The Ukrainians have a good defensive positions in this area, is now cut off from logistics from this direction, from Yablanivka, from Oleksandro Kalinove. And if we look over here, the only remaining logistics line into this area comes through this tight, narrow gap right here. If we measure it, you can see that the operational space that the Ukrainians have to keep this entire area supplied is about 1.23 miles. That means that drones are heavily operating over this area. Artillery is heavily operating in this area on these logistics lines. And the Ukrainian positions in these areas down here to the south are going to either be encircled very shortly, or there will be a forced withdrawal. And this will be a massive forced withdrawal behind this reservoir. And the beginning of the battle, the defense of Kostyantynivka is going to begin. The Ukrainians are still trying to prevent the Russians from exiting Toretsk. And once this all falls, the Russians will be basically at the doorstep of Kostyantynivka. This is going to be a major battle, and this city is not particularly positioned well for the Ukrainian defenders. So as I've showed here, this is sort of where the high ground ends, and I will take us over to the topographical map so you guys can see that. Remember, guys, if you have questions that you would like answered live on air, you can always ask those through super chats. I will always see those. I'll come over to the chat from time to time, but on my screen, I have the chat. It's way over here, and I'm focused on this stuff. So I'm sorry if I miss your guys' questions. I'm not doing it intentionally. All right. So just to talk about the advances, Russian forces have advanced further into Yablanivka, which is they're moving west to east in this village towards the reservoir up here, the large lake. And to the south here, Russian forces have just advanced north of Zyora through these fields. Again, not anything major, but just a large chunk of territory, 6.7 square miles. Moving over here to the Toretsk front, Russian forces have advanced into the string of defensive fortifications right here, which again brings them very, very close. If they capture this final defensive fortification, there will be almost no operational space for the Ukrainians to run logistics into this area. And if that happens, like I said, this entire area is going to fall. The entire line is basically going to move where I have this green line. This area will eventually move up to that spot as well. As we've seen here, the Russians have already pushed into Delivka and have now captured the area between Delivka and the canal. That pocket has closed, forcing the Ukrainians to step back. And just the operational space is just getting tighter and tighter and tighter in this area. And eventually, the Ukrainians are just going to be fighting basically out of Kostyantynivka itself. And Kostyantynivka is quite major. I will do a battle prediction for this as well. I'll show the strong defensive areas and how I assume the Russians will approach the capture of the said city. All right. Russian forces have advanced and captured the southern end of Stupochke, which has put that village under Russian control. I don't know if the entire thing is under Russian control. I don't know exactly where they consider it ending. But it appears that Stupochke is under Russian control. And again, this is a very, very vital high ground position that the Russians have now taken. I am going to take us over to the topographical map to show you guys that. All right, moving down here, we can see that the Russians let's zoom in a little bit. So the Russians have advanced out and are fighting currently in this area. You can see that this is low ground, so it's not even like the Ukrainians are running along the high ground. They're running in a creek valley, river valley, whatever you want to call it, a low ground, a ravine. That's where Ukrainian logistics run into these settlements. The Russians have the high ground over to the west and to the east and to the west. And then moving over to Zaporizhzhia, if we zoom in, you can see how Zaporizhzhia is on a very important high ground. So the Russians capturing this area is extremely important, as well as this area down to the south is also the high ground right here between Dmivka and the canal has also been captured. So the Russians are pushing in on Kostyantynivka from all angles. And then if we look at Kostyantynivka itself, you can see how much of a low ground it is already on. If the Russians are able to cross this area where the lake is and the reservoir and get onto the high ground and into these fortifications right here, the Battle of Kostyantynivka will begin almost immediately. High ground makes no difference in modern warfare. That is the stupidest thing I have ever heard in my entire life. Just because drones exist does not mean that high ground is not important. If you can fire ATGMs, if you can see your enemy before they see you, if you can do a number of things from high ground, it is very important. Just because you have a drone that is able to reach a higher elevation does not mean that your drones are always able to fly. And it also doesn't mean that the ease of assaults, whether Russian or Ukrainian, isn't hampered by having to march up a hill. That's the stupidest take I've ever heard in my entire life, Ralph. I'm sorry. You might be a fan, but that's you get one of these. That's a hot take right there. High ground makes no difference. Wow. Well, then I wonder why both sides push for the high ground every single time they're fighting. You should tell the Ukrainians and the Russians, because they don't seem to listen to you when you say that. And I think that is it for the updates. I am expecting some movement here in the Sumy region into these settlements over the next week. So before Friday, which I think is when I'm going to do my next live stream, I do expect the Russians to have captured Yanikivka and have moved down into Mala Korakivka, Novosich, all these settlements down here, and Kohytin, which is an important one. All right. That is it for updates for today, guys. Kind of short, but not as many days since my last live stream. We have some stuff to talk about now. The biggest strategic L's by the AFRU, the Russian Air Force in 2024. That's not how you type out the Russian Air Force. So if that's what you're talking about, I'm not sure. You have a good day too, Sean Oliver. No problem, Miller Pebbles. I appreciate you. I don't know what you mean by biggest strategic L's. You could just talk about any days when they have a large number of aviation losses would be the three biggest. Yeah. Armed forces. Armed forces of the Russian. The three biggest setbacks of the ground forces, I guess you would say Kursk. The Ukrainians pushing into Kursk, even though that was a strategic blunder for the Ukrainians. The initial attack was very strong. So I would say that's probably one of them. And then maybe like a training camp that got hit would maybe be one, like a mass casualty event. But outside of that, I mean, the Russians have been doing quite a bit of winning through 2024 and into 2025. I haven't seen a lot of there hasn't been like a pontoon disaster like we saw in 2022. There haven't been these massive failed assaults like we saw around Ugledar early on in the war. The Russians are learning. They're just not making the same level of mistakes, and they're moving very slow. So it's not really a lot of opportunities for them to make said mistakes. Yeah, and then this is actually a good point, Alexander. There's not really any strategic L's, right? The Russians haven't been taking strategic losses anywhere. They've been taking tactical losses, even like strategic bombers being lost. Unless you're planning on launching nukes anytime soon, those bombers have really never done anything. They just resemble a nuclear triad, right? They fire missiles into Ukraine, but only 4 to 8 bombers do that every time we see it. So as long as the Russians have 4 to 8 bombers, strategically, they're not really losing anything when it comes to the Ukraine conflict. But yeah, all right. Very serious question. Are you going to map Los Angeles riots? And man, if it turns into a real thing, yeah, for sure. But riots are just riots. The way I look at the whole LA situation, we can talk about this a little bit. This is just another distraction. You have the media out doing their propaganda thing. You have both sides claiming they're right in hyper emotional ways. Once again, I don't really get the whole. I don't know if you're in the country illegally. I have an opinion on this because my father came to the country as a non-American citizen, and I watched for like 11 years as he struggled to get his citizenship. Just going through the process, it takes forever, and watching him do that, and then watching people complain about not whatever, somebody that they know getting deported because they're here illegally, not paying taxes, so on and so forth. It's kind of difficult for me. I'm not about ripping families away from each other and stuff like that, but there's a lot of people that are taking advantage of our system. And if you don't take care of that, you're going to see things like what's happening in Europe right now. You lose the American value system. You lose the culture when you're letting people come in and not forcing them to integrate. I don't know if that makes sense. When you invite people into your country, immigration is vital, right? You need immigration. It's the lifeblood of most nations. But when you don't force people to integrate in some sort of fashion, work hard, become an American, learn, sort of drop the ideas of their country, not forget their culture, not forget who they are, but drop the negative aspects of their country when they come into your country. If they're able to do that, that's good immigration. That's what keeps your country strong. When you're just letting people come across the border and they're taking advantage of the system and they don't care. It's like renting a home versus owning a home. When you have renters in a property, they absolutely destroy the place because they're not paying for it. They're going to be out in a year or 6 months or 3 months. They don't care. They're not going to even tell you about it. They don't want their security deposit to get hit. When you own the home, it's your responsibility, right? You didn't build it, but whatever. You might have built it. It's yours. You're paying for it. It matters to you. And the worse shape it gets in, the more it negatively affects you. And that's what immigration should be. Immigration should be buying a home, right? You want to make the place better. You want to contribute. And so for me, that's my position on it. But my real position on the whole immigration thing is, or these riots in particular, is it's just a distraction. There's so much negative publicity right now, and it's much better to keep Americans angry at each other rather than working together against the government, which they're angry at in actuality. So as long as Democrats and liberals are fighting in the streets and there's a bunch of emotion around it and everybody's like, oh, this must be important because this is happening. It's just another Black Lives Matter thing. It's just another, what was it? I mean, COVID was like this. Just keep everybody angry at each other. Nobody actually understands what's even happening. It's just all raw emotion. And Americans are so easily manipulated against each other that's what they're doing. I mean, it's very obvious. And yeah. Okay. Thank you for your question. There have been reporters on Telegram of Ukrainian teenagers being captured by Russian soldiers. Do you anticipate the mobilization of 18-year-olds soon? Listen, it's the Ukrainian domestic situation is very poor right now, and doing anything, the Ukrainian regime doing anything like that is going to have long-term negative impacts, more so than the manpower shortage is currently having. And I know that might sound wild, but if they go and they start ripping these young boys away from their families, first off, that's the death of the country. They're basically admitting that this is the death of their country. which I already think it is. But, they can't admit that because they have to keep the Ukrainians fighting for as long as possible, right? Zelensky, that regime, has to keep the Ukrainians fighting for as long as possible, hating the Russians, so on. And doing that basically tells everybody, we don't care about your future. We're fighting till the end. And the Ukrainian population is just not going to be particularly impressed with all of that. They're already fighting the mobilization officers in most cities around Ukraine. They are blowing up mobilization officers. One was recently killed in Odessa, and there was another car bombing in Pokrovsk, which also could be related to the TCC, which are the people catchers, basically. So I think it's going to be a very hard thing for them to ask. And I think that they are more than likely going to just start black bagging young men instead of formally saying, hey, we're making this a policy. Thank you for your question, though. Do you think I just answered this question. Like I said, probably not officially, but in practice, yes. I imagine that they'll have to, right? They have to get men from somewhere. 60-year-olds are already allowed to sign petitions, but you can see that, and let's relate this not just to the mobilization issue. Let's relate this to the 6,000 Ukrainian bodies currently in Russian morgues that the Russians are trying to turn to the Ukrainian state, right? They're saying, hey, currently there are 1,200 bodies in refrigerator trucks in Bryansk that want to be given back. And now it finally sounds like the Ukrainians are going to go ahead and go forward with it. But the reason why they aren't accepting them is there's a couple reasons, right? That domestic situation that I talked about is getting so poor. The Ukrainian regime is struggling to hold on to stability within their own population. And when they come forward and say, well, remember those 1,200 guys we said were missing? Yeah, they were all dead. We knew they were dead. They were in Russian morgues. We sent them into the Kursk region to die. And now we have to pay out benefits to their families. Now we have to admit these losses, which is going to skyrocket our total casualties for the war, which makes us look like liars. It's a very smart move by the Russians to be like, hey, come take these bodies back. And it's obvious why the Ukrainians don't want to take them back. It does appear that now they're going to do so, as after the Russians had set up a DNA matching app, basically, where you could send them your DNA and they would try to see if there was a match to any of their deceased DNA samples, which they've taken DNA samples from all of those Ukrainians, all those bodies they have. So, I don't think that we're going to see the mobilization of that age group on paper, but in practice, I believe we will. All right, guys. Thank you for your questions. We have one more. Have retaliation operation? Would you say the retaliation for Operation Spiderweb have been sufficient, or is there still more in the pipeline? So this is what I think there's sort of a slight misunderstanding when it comes to retaliation by the Russians. The Russians are not necessarily retaliating in the way that Westerners think of retaliation. It's not so much an eye for an eye sort of deal. That's not the situation. You're not going to see, I mean, there is no direct eye for an eye, right? There's not really anything in Ukraine that could be hit that would elicit the same level of escalation as the bombers. I guess you could say that the Russians could strike the dam north of Kiev and flood Kiev. They're not going to do that. That's not the Russian plan at all. They don't want to do that. That just goes against the last, 3 years of war that they've been fighting and the way that they've been fighting it. They're not going to take out bridges, guys. Soviet-designed bridges across the Dnieper are designed to take nuclear strikes, not directly, but indirectly, and survive the shockwave and everything. The number of munitions that would be required to make those bridges inoperable is unbelievable. It would be incredibly large, and it doesn't really suit the Russian objectives Because the Russian objectives are not territory, right? It's the destruction of the Ukrainian military. And it's much easier to destroy the Ukrainian military in the eastern part of the country, where they have to take logistics from Lvov to Kramatorsk. That provides a lot more opportunities to destroy it before it even reaches the front line, gets to the front line, so on and so forth. The advances that you see from the Russians are in tactical nature, which force the Ukrainians into a much more bloody situation for themselves. Pockets, encirclements, so on and so forth. And destroying those bridges, first off, it's a very public and political statement that the Russians don't want to make. They don't want to do that. That doesn't suit them, other than potentially forcing the Ukrainian military to sit behind the Dnieper River and build up, and then the Russians are able to advance, and there's going to be all this chaos. There's going to be a massive refugee crisis. It's just there's so many variables with striking those objects, and I'm not saying that they're never going to do it. They very well could, but I think that the idea behind this is, if we get there and the bridges are still standing, we might be able to use them. If we get there and the bridges are still standing and the Ukrainians below them, it's going to be very symbolic that they're letting go of that entire side of their country. I also think that, like I said, just the munition expenditure, it's going to take 30 to 40 Iskanders or KH-22 missiles or something like that to make these bridges inoperable. It's going to take a momentous amount of effort, and the outcome, the results of it might not even be as substantial as people think. They might think that it will completely reduce logistics, but Ukrainians are going to be able to pontoon that river. There's areas where it's almost dirt all the way across, and they can just lower the reservoir levels, and they can do a lot of different stuff up and down the river. It's going to make it more difficult for sure, but the army is already at the point where the Russians are advancing where they see fit, wherever they apply pressure. They're having successes. The Ukrainian army is being degraded. So why escalate and perhaps invoke a Western response of some sort? Why do any of that? You're almost there, right? The US is about to pivot away. Europe is about to basically commit Ukraine to bleeding to death in this conflict. Why not wait for the whole war to become much easier and do what the Russians are currently doing? And what is the retaliation we are seeing from the Russians right now? The retaliation we're seeing is not some massive emotional response. Like the US put out that warning. They were like, be careful, US citizens. We're worried about a massive Russian response. Adhere to alarms, and stay away from political objects like the Rada and stuff like that, the large political buildings in Kiev. And I read that and I was like, again, this is like the 5th time the US has put out one of these advisories about political buildings being hit, and never once has Russia targeted these buildings. Not only have they not targeted them, but they don't really matter, right? You get rid of the building, but if you don't kill all the people inside of the building, it doesn't make any difference. And even if you kill all the people inside of the building, you're going to find out very quickly that the Rada and the Ukrainian government are not really the ones doing any of this. The very high ups in the Ukrainian government, Zelensky, Yermak, those guys, Budanov, those guys are. And if they removed those guys, that would probably be substantial, even though they would likely just be replaced immediately. But it's the Western striking data. It's the Western arms supplies. It's the Western logistics. It's the Western money, right? So doing all of these hyper emotional reactive strikes only benefits one side, and that's Ukraine. Ukraine can use those as propaganda. They can say, look, the Russians are here to destroy our livelihoods. They're here to destroy our culture, so on and so forth. What are the Russians doing right now? The Russians are launching the largest missile and drone strikes we have ever seen, incurring some of the lowest civilian casualties we've ever seen from strikes of this size. Like I said, Kharkov was hit 56 times by drones and missiles, 10 plus Iskanders a couple days ago, and nobody died. Nobody died. Why? Because the Russians are specifically targeting military industrial facilities. What does Ukraine need more than anything right now? Production, right? Europe isn't covering it. The US is pulling back and not doing damn near as much as they were. The Chinese have stopped supplying drones to the Ukrainians. So where is this going to come from? right? It has to come from the domestic production. And that's what we've seen get absolutely obliterated these last few strikes. And the strike tempo is every day or every other day. Either we see a massive drone and Iskander strike, or we see strategic aviation participate. Most recently, we saw 4 Kinzhals strike the Dunbay airport in the Rivne area, completely destroyed it. According to firms maps, massive fires at the location. We've seen multiple industrial facilities hit. Kiev was hit very hard yesterday, and that did. I'm sorry, 2 days ago. Was it last night or was it this morning? No, it was last night. So yesterday. Yesterday morning, Kiev was hit very hard. They hit the oil storage facilities outside of the Bosville airport. They hit a number of just basically seemingly meaningless buildings, right? Iskanders are falling on random warehouses and shops in Kiev, and not like botanical shop, not like a store on a storefront, but like workshops, like random warehouse buildings, different facilities that have most definitely been altered from their former production into military production. That's what the Russians are striking. That's going to have the greatest battlefield impact. And again, decapitation strikes are an interesting thing to talk about. But what you're going to find out very quickly is that this proxy is not run by the people in the country. It's run by the people outside of the country. And assassinating those people is just going to create propaganda for the Ukrainian state. Thank you for your comment. Oh, which is the biggest torn of the RFU, SBU, or GUR? I don't know what you mean by torn again. I'm sorry. There seems to be a little bit of a language barrier. The greatest torn, the biggest torn. I don't know what that means. I appreciate your comment though. If you add another comment, or I might see it, and I'll try to answer that. All right, guys. If you have some questions, go ahead and get some questions in. I am going to talk about, let me think. Do we have anything to talk about? Oh, I was going to talk about Iran a little bit. The biggest thorn. Is that what she's trying to say? The biggest thorn the biggest thorn to the Russian armed forces would be Ukrainian sabotage, Ukrainian intelligence, NATO intelligence, strike data. Basically, if this war would be over, if the Ukrainians didn't have access to Russian satellites, they do. All of those hits you see the Ukrainians undertake, all done through Western strike data. So that's the biggest thorn. Getting the U.S. to give up giving data would be the biggest win for the Russians. For the SBU, it's dealing with the fact that they're a proxy. I would say that's the biggest thorn in their side. They are not an ally. They are a proxy. And you see the way Israel is treated versus the way Ukraine is treated. That's really the difference there. Though those are the biggest thorns in their side, I would say. The biggest issue for the SBU is understanding that they're just being used. And for the Russians, it's the fact that Western striking data is being given to Ukrainians. All right, guys, if you guys want to get some questions in, I will now be looking at the chat more closely, and I'm going to talk about Iran. So Iran recently, according to their own claims, and they've been very public about all of this, said that they got their hands on a absolute truckload of Ukrainian intelligence, basically the mother lode. Something akin to what you would expect from Mossad, right? If Mossad just released every single intimate detail of Iranian intelligence operations and secret facilities and so on and so forth. That's what the Iranians got from the Israelis. So I've been saying that the Mossad got Mossaded, and they claim that they know an awful lot about Israeli nuclear weapons production and storage, including the top secret facilities, which are not publicly known. They say that they also have a full list of Israeli strike targets inside of Iran. So now they are prepared for those targets to be struck. They know what the Israelis know. They also got a cadre of Israeli information about their intelligence operations in the Middle East. So this is a huge blunder for the Israelis, if it's true. And it does seem to be true just based off of some of the comments from Western pundits, basically saying that, that one American came out and said the information that the Iranians got about nuclear facilities in Israel is not really that big of a deal because you have to walk down like 30 flights of stairs in a hardened bunker facility to reach it. And it's like, that's not the point, but thank you for admitting that the Israelis have nukes, which, by the way, Israeli lawyers will never admit that the Israeli state has nukes. It's been like this ongoing thing. How you know if somebody is a shill for Israel, other than them openly shilling for Israel, is just ask them if Israel has nukes. If they are legally obligated to Israel, they will not say that Israel has nukes. So that's a sort of a way to test waters with people when you're talking to them. But the Iranians have changed their posture entirely when it comes to the nuclear negotiations. They seem to be very, very confident now. Trump is openly talking about how confident the Iranians seem to be in these new negotiations. They're pushing for negotiations in Oman. And it looks like the Iranians are now standing their ground much more firmly than previously. They are talking about striking these facilities if Israel is to strike anything in Iran. The Iranians are talking about, the Israelis are still talking about striking Iranian nuclear sites. And there seems to be just no common position in the Western negotiating team, whether they're going to allow Iran to have like 3.86% enriched uranium, which is like the requirement for civilian use for nuclear sites, like nuclear programs, like actual nuclear programs, not nuclear weapons programs. And yeah, it seems like the entire negotiating playfield has stabilized and leveled off, and the Iranians are in a much stronger position, which puts, I think, them in a much greater risk now of being struck by Israel. And what the Iranians have come out and said most recently is that if Israel is to strike Iran, they will pull out of the nuclear agreement and immediately pursue proliferation of nuclear weapons. So, the Iranians nutted up pretty tough after this. And my big question is, was this an actual Iranian operation, or was this information leaked by somebody in the Israeli military or government, or somebody in the United States intelligence apparatus? Because not to say that the Iranians are incapable of doing this, but the timing in the middle of negotiations for this information to come out is quite peculiar, to say the least, and greatly, greatly benefits the side that the information was leaked to, which makes me think that there may have been somebody who really doesn't want a war to happen and ended up leaking this information to set the Israelis back and get them off of their high horse about going to war with Iran or pulling the U.S. into a war with Iran. All right. I think that's all I had to talk about today. So if you guys have some questions, you can go ahead and get them in. I will be looking at the chat. We can just do a little chitty chat now. Why is there so many Israeli and Ukrainian shills on Twitter? Because they're trying to win the information space. See, I'm presenting news to you guys. If Russia starts losing tomorrow, I'm going to tell you Russia's losing tomorrow. If the Iranians get absolutely obliterated, I'm going to tell you that the Iranians got absolutely obliterated. I'm not here to lie. I don't get paid by anybody. Oh, in fact, I was thinking about running ads on my live streams at just random times, just being like, I'm going to an ad break, and then just putting on like a 1990s Circuit City commercial or something like that, like a Hollywood video, or I don't know. In those places in America have all gone out of business, like Blockbuster, like put up a Blockbuster video, like a commercial for just no reason. Nobody's getting benefits from it. just so you guys have to watch advertisements. That's what I was thinking. Like hometown buffet, just throw up a nice hometown buffet ad. I don't know what in Europe has gone out of business. Is there something super big in Europe that's gone out of business? Because send me that and I'll run that ad. That's that's what I think I'm going to run for ads. There's one Blockbuster. Yeah, there is one Blockbuster left. But I will be advertising for the Blockbuster in Minneapolis. So not the one in Oregon that's still like the original one that's open. A Volkswagen. No, Volkswagen is still around, isn't it? I mean, I get the joke, but Circuit City gone, Fry's gone, Radio Shack gone. I know it's a disaster, man. I can't believe GameStop is still open. That's crazy. What is another place that deserves to be closed but isn't closed? Sports Scott, watch ads or skip them, or just skip them because it's an ad and they suck. Yeah. All right. If you guys got questions, like I said, I'll be answering them for a little while here. I'll probably go to an hour on this live stream. Is there anybody who wants to just throw up a stupid take for me to destroy real quick? It doesn't seem like we have very many haters in here right now, which is a shame because I like to use them. Also, if you guys have ideas for banners, like I have this one, I have this one, and then I have this one. All right. Do you think Ukrainians started believing their own propaganda? They have been. They've been believing it for a long time. They definitely drank their own Kool-Aid. They thought they were going to be able to win. They thought the United States was on their side. Classic trope. Question: how does weather impact the Russian advances, and how has it changed during the war? So, this is a good question. When it's rainy or cloudy, that's mostly the weather that we're talking about. Windy is also a thing, but it's not regularly super windy in Ukraine. The weather is detrimental to Russian aviation. So not as many glide bombs will be dropping, not as many missile strikes will be occurring. But the cloud cover on a tactical level can actually benefit the side which is on the offense, because drones spot out Russian assaults immediately. So if there's low cloud cover or it's rainy and drones are not able to operate, and as long as the ground conditions are not horrible, it usually benefits the Russian side. You will see Russian advances come when the rain moves in. Not during the rainy season, because during the rainy season, usually the ground is just disgusting mulch. But during the dry season, when they get rain or cloud cover, that tends to benefit. Say hi to everybody. He likes to bite my hand. He just comes in to hang out. Come here. Come say hi to everybody. There he is. Say hi. He doesn't know. He doesn't understand. Oh, talk about the downed Su-35. Okay. There was a downed Su-35 in the Kursk region. It was about 17 kilometers from the front line. So they pushed in quite deep. And when they pushed in, they were pushed close to the border. The Russian aircraft pushed close to the border to probably drop a glide bomb or something of the sort. When it did so, a Patriot that had moved into the Sumy region revealed itself, shot down that Su-35, which is just, again, the Ukrainians going for small victories outside of Ukraine. It does help, I guess, a little bit. Takes out one plane, but the Russian production of Su-35s, Su-34s, and so on is well enough to cover the losses that they're taking in Ukraine. He's literally just has his head on my lap, by the way. I'm just rubbing him down here. They took down that plane. The pilot was ejected and was recovered. And yeah, it's sort of like a non-event. It's just a regular battlefield loss. Maybe we'll see a Patriot battery getting. He's a good boy. A Patriot battery getting taken out in the near future in the Sumy region. Well, I don't think that you said an Su-34 outran the Patriot and an Su-35 lighter couldn't. Go figure. It wasn't running. It was 17 kilometers from the border and was facing the direction. I guess it could have spun when it was coming down, but it didn't appear like the plane went cold. It looked like it got surprised. It looks like then this is exactly what they were going for. The operational space changed, right? The Russians do the same thing every day with success. The Ukrainians change something on the battlefield for a small period of time and create a zone of danger that the Russians aren't aware of. A plane gets shot down. Now the Russians are aware of this zone of danger and they're going to be much more careful. You got peanut butter down there? No, which is funny. That's why I said something, because I'm just like down here rubbing his head. No, Great Danes like to just like lay on you. They'll like sit on you. They'll put all their weight on you. He's so tall. He like side sits on the couch. Like he has his front legs off and his butt on. And so they are always just they'll lean on you. They're the sweetest dogs you'll have ever met. But no, he just puts his head in your lap and expects you to rub him. Where's the Ghost of Kiev? He got he got killed fighting a Garen drone. Sorry. Yeah, he really is a Great Dane, and he's huge too. And now he's just laying down. I don't know, being a good boy. He's the dog. He's the dog of all dogs. Actually, he's not. My other dog, Atlas, my American Bulldog, he's the fucking bee's knees. This guy's still young. Still acting like a crazy boy, huh? Did you see some of the recent attacks on Ukrainian offshore oil rigs? Oh, sorry, he bumped me. Yes, I can actually show you guys the video of that. I forgot that happened. The Ukrainians sometimes use oil rigs offshore for operations, and in this instance they were using it for a refueling point and a launch point for sea-based drones. The Russians then, I'm on the wrong account, oops, on my mapping account, sorry. The Russians struck said oil rig with a KH-22 missile, which is quite large. It's a quite large missile for that. So here, I'll bring you guys over and we can look at that. Here you go. So here's the oil rig out at sea. And boom! It's hit by a very, very large missile, and half of the oil rig was just basically completely burnt up and destroyed. The other portion was damaged. What's up with the attack on Snake Island? Any idea? No, I didn't. We didn't get any confirmation of an actual attack on the island. That oil rig was likely the target that they were saying, because the missiles never actually went over Ukraine. They just struck an offshore position near the island. So it wasn't likely the island. However, we did see a Russian Su-34R or 35R. I can't remember which one is the reconnaissance, like the recon one. It might have just been a drone. I think it was a SU watching Snake Island recently. So there's probably some Ukrainian activity on the island, or the Russians may be preparing to go back and reestablish themselves on the island. Although I doubt the latter. Hello from Brazil. Do you think this war could become like the Israel-Gaza conflict, a never-ending war? This war has been going on for longer than the. Oh, do you mean like 60 years long? Like, is that what you mean? Like the entire history of Israel and Gaza and all that? in Palestine. No, Ukraine doesn't have the material, and the Russians aren't going to allow that. See, the reason why you can't the Israelis are having a hard time winning in Gaza is because you have to ethnically cleanse the entire area. That's how they win, is by carrying out a genocide. Like and that's why they haven't been able to do it for so long, because it's a horrible thing to do. The Russians don't have to genocide the Ukrainians to take over their land and then incorporate them into the Russian Federation. So the Israelis won't do that because they don't want. They already have an apartheid state, basically. So no, I don't think this is going to be a never-ending war. Question: is it cool when the Russian missiles used flares? I mean, it is what it is. I guess it's cool. Greta, what's her face is probably pissed because of the oil spill. Yeah, I imagine so. That's funny. Do you prefer indica or sativa? I just had an ounce of sativa, and it was really, really good. I always just do indica because I like to calm down. See, I have like ADHD really bad, and I can choose between like taking meth, which like calms me down in a weird way, but it's hard. It messes up my sleep really bad, which is already horrible. And it's not really meth; it's like Adderall, but it's a stimulant. It's meth, and that really calms me down. And this indica does the same thing. It like relaxes my brain. It kind of shuts it off because my brain is like going all the time. That's why I'm good at Twitter. Is because I'm constantly like thinking. I'm constantly doing stuff, and I can just exert all of my ADHD into Twitter, right? And I can sit here and I can talk for like an hour and a half because my brain is just going. It never ends. So I tend to do sativa in the morning before I work, which is funny that you're like, I'm going to start my day the right way. But it's like instead of doing Adderall every day, which is horrible for you, I just take a little puff of weed and then my brain regulates down to a position where I'm not hyperactive, is what I would say. Same goes for pre-workout. Like I take pre-workout and I don't get jittery. I don't get crazy or anything. I get super calm. Like other than like getting like a thermal reaction in my body, I can take pre-workout and then go sit somewhere and be like focused. It's so irritating. Kids don't do drugs. Y'all grown bald. Like you grown bald like Scott. I started smoking well after I lost my hair, good sir. Dude, same thing exactly. Thank God, man. Thank God somebody's with me there. Sativa helps you play guitar. I highly doubt that. All right, guys, that's where I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much. This has been episode 156 of Calibrated with Scott. Be sure to click that like and subscribe button. If you have not, leave a comment. My dogs are going crazy because my girlfriend is locked out of the house. That is where I'm going to wrap it up, guys. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic weekend. I will see you, or rest of your week. I will see you on Monday.